are in listen-only mode.
Welcome everyone. My name is Vaishali Jain and I'll be your moderator today. And we're very excited to host today's technical webinar on understanding the Windows Server Administration Fundamentals, Part 1. We want to thank you for joining us here at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. Presenting today's topic is Magdi Siffin. Just a little bit about Magdi. Magdi is a chief engineer, information technology professional, network security consultant with 20 years of experience in IT operations and 14 years as an IT technical trainer and learning consultant. Now, please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. So if you're interested in a further discussion, you can make an appointment with one of our learning consultants through our website at netcomlearning.com. And today's session is being recorded, so you'll get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Award-winning global leader in managed learning services, training, and talent development. We offer over 2,000 IT, business, and soft skill courses available to organizations around the world, encompassing all your technology and business training needs. Netcom Learning is the most trusted name in both business and IT training and offers top-notch instructors and vendor-approved coursework offering certification preparation for a variety of vendor certifications. So why should you attend this webinar? Windows Server Administration is an advanced computer networking topic that includes server installation and configuration, server roles, storage, Active Directory and group policy, file, print, and web services, remote access, virtualization, application servers, troubleshooting, performance, and reliability. With this webinar, explore the key fundamentals of the Windows Server Administration. Now we're going to give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the Escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. And everyone has been muted except for our presenters. So please feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters in the questions pane, and we'll address them at the end of the session. There's also a PDF copy of today's slides that are in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. And now I'm going to go ahead and pass it along to Magdi to present today's topic. Magdi?
Thanks, Vaishali. Thank you so much. Today's agenda is: what is a server? Server roles, server hardware, workgroups and domains, devices and printers, Windows Server operating system management tools, and finally we are going to be answering your questions about today's topic. Today's webinar is directed and dedicated to those who want to be server technicians after achieving some certifications, either certifications from CompTIA or from Microsoft. If you are having a year and a half of IT experience or equivalent certifications like A+ certifications or Network Plus certifications, they are essential for you to go to the Server Plus or Microsoft Technology Associate and to work with Microsoft platforms as server technician. So for career path, you go either with 1.5 years of IT experience or go through certification exams, A+ certification, while you know how to build computers and how to deal with the hardware and troubleshoot the hardware and software problems. And then go to the Network Plus certification while you know and learn about the network infrastructure and the hardware and software that make your network work actually and perform tasks for the customers or the users connected to it. Then go to either Microsoft Server Technician or Microsoft MTA certification exam 98-365, or go through CompTIA Server Plus certified and you became a server technician certified from CompTIA. The difference between Microsoft certification and CompTIA certification, that CompTIA is vendor-less certification, so you don't have the in-depth knowledge of a certain platform like the Microsoft, for example, Windows or Red Hat Linux certification that directed to the server management or the server technician. While Microsoft Technology Associate is directed to Windows Server certification. So you can, if you want to go with the certification path with Microsoft and get to know the Windows platform, the Windows Server platform, and get to know what's in depth there. So what is a server? A server is a computer that providing services. This is the ground meaning of it. A computer that can provide services for the users or other computers. While computers usually in the and can perform services. And I'm going to give an example. When you open your browser and you type www.netcomlearning.com, your computer is asking a web server that is hosting the web page www.netcomlearning.com and send a request to that server and download the web page and view it. You can view it on your screen. That is asking for service and replying for service from the web server. Same thing in today's client-server model. While servers can perform the same and can actually perform services, provide services for other computers while asking for those services from other servers. And an example for that, if you have a computer that's asking to go to a web page over the internet, and that computer is connected to local area network. While this computer is not allowed to go to the internet by itself, you're going to be setting up something called proxy server, and that computer, instead of going directly to the internet, it will ask the proxy server for the web page address www.netcomlearning.com, and that request is going to go through the proxy server itself to the web server that's hosting the website www.netcomlearning.com, and then when the response is coming to the proxy server is going to pass that respond to your computer. The proxy server here is acting as a middleman between two. It actually separates your LAN from the internet and acting as a filter, so no one on the internet knows that your computer in the LAN on the organization LAN side requested that web page. So what the people see, or what the other computers see, and what the web server saw when responded to that request, they saw only the proxy server. So the network that is made and based on the client server network is actually having many servers that is this network is based on. Those servers either perform file hosting or print, acting as print server, which they are the most common type of servers around, and they have been around for so many years, so people can assume that if you are going to be having a server on your network, it is going to be performing print and file hosting server. The server-based network is the best to share the resources and data between users. It also provides centralized security and management through a main server that's called Active Directory in Windows platform. The Active Directory is a database for users and computers over your network that control and secure the login credential for every user and every computer connected to that server. Starting with network-based platform that based on the client server model with Windows Server 2003 and 2008, usually the Active Directory had that maximized role for securing the user data and computers, and the performance is becoming more and more better with the time passing by. So with Windows Server 2016 or 2016, it has the best Active Directory practice right now, how it's faster, how it's more secure, and how it's bundled with another product called Microsoft Azure, and that's directed to the cloud. Of course, if you will be continuing with Microsoft technology and attending more webinars with me, you will learn about the Azure furthermore in the future webinars. So what are the server roles that usually the server can perform? As I said before, the file server and the print server are the most famous type of server roles, but also I mentioned the web server. There is a remote access server, an application server, which you can host the applications for other users. And I'm going to give an example. If your company has a database that is managing company sales and customers, for example, and you are serving over 2,000 users that has records in that database, you're probably going to need an application server that can host this database. And as very famous example, Microsoft SQL Server or SQL Server is a very famous example for that. The email server from Microsoft too, because we are discussing Windows Server administration fundamentals. So the mail server, which is Exchange server from Microsoft, can consider a server role too. A server role also here is an edge transport server that's acting as a server on the edge network in the DMZ area, while it's separated from the inner network or from your LAN network and from the internet by 2 firewalls to protect that edge transport server. While also you have integration between the hub transport server that a part of the Exchange server or the mail server from Microsoft and a part of the internal network, and that integration is usually giving the people the authorization, the authentication, and the authorization requests, and respond to that through the Active Directory before they can look to their mailbox on the Exchange server. Usually a server can has multiple roles and can perform multiple roles. When you design your server and design it around the workload of this server, how many users this server is going to be responding to and provide service to, how many computers that server is going to serve. That load that server is going to be put under is very important to know to utilize your design for your server and choose your right hardware and the right software when you design that solution for your customer. Going to select server hardware is not an easy task. You go through the process of meeting with the customer or meeting with the client, and you do the research with them, and you ask so many questions regarding the requirements, what type of software they want to deploy on this server. It's not only the server is not only the operating system, it is also what the services that will be provided through that operating system. The server operating system is the framework that those applications or other solutions going to be deployed on it. So after you do the researches and after you test the compatibility between the server operating system and the other applications that there will be deployed on that server operating system, after that you will choose how to select the server hardware that will be hosting those solutions and operating system that will be the server operating system. First thing you choose regarding the hardware, and you have to consider to design that solution, is the multiple users that will connect to your server at the same time. How many users are going to be asking for a service from this server? What if a server will fail? How a server technician can deal with the failure of the server? You as a server technician, how you plan if a component of a server will fail? All these questions need to be answered before you go further and buy hardware to deploy in a server room. So what are the components that will govern our selection? There are some primary system components that any server technician must bear in mind and take care of before designing or before selecting a server solution for a customer or a client. The processor, the memory, the storage, and the network. Those are the key components that if any one of those fails, the server will fail. And an example for that, if any bottleneck happened on any of those components, it will slow the server down. And by bottleneck we mean, for example, if a server is designed for to serve 100 users per an hour or per less than an hour, and all of a sudden that 100 user became 500. The server will fail under something called bottleneck. We can imagine that what's going on in the real life when you have a web server, and that web server all of a sudden has multiple users connecting to the web page of that web server. And all of a sudden that web server that is designed to serve 100 or 200 users per time is having requests to serve more than that, 500, 1,000, 2,000, and all of a sudden you will be seeing web pages not available. That's what's caused by a bottleneck. It can jeopardize the whole performance of the server. Let's go further and see what are the components that affecting the design. First component is the processor. Every single computer, not only the server, is built around the processor. The processor or the microprocessor is a microchip that perform the mathematical and logical operations. Every single click, every single keystroke that you are typing or clicking is translated to zeros and ones, which an electric pulses that microprocessor can understand and can show it on your screen when you are typing in your Word document, in your Excel sheet. Every single touch to your keyboard, every single keystroke, it will translate to that zeros and ones electric pulses, so the processor will understand that request from you to type this letter or number and then transform that to the operating system again to be written on your spreadsheet or your word processor. Second component is the RAM. The memory or the RAM, we call it random access memory. It is a short time or temporarily memory, which is different than your hard disk drive. Your hard disk drive is a place that you can keep your data, and after disconnecting the computer or turning off the computer, your data is stored on that hard disk drive. While the RAM stored the instruction and the data that the processor accessed directly, and it worked as between a medium between the motherboard and the processor when it comes to storing data before it's written actually to your hard disk drive. Typically, if you have more RAM, it will be reflected to your whole server performance. That means these RAM can usually store more data for the processor to handle and to process. The more RAM you add, the more instructions and the more data for the processor to handle. That leads sometimes to a bottleneck of the processor, which means if you add more RAM than the processor can handle, it will cause that processor to be having a bottleneck. And bottleneck is something that can jeopardize the performance of the processor, make it run slower, making it can cause overheating of the processor, and can cause system instability. So as a server technician and as system technician, you have to know and you have to understand it's not by how many RAMs you add to the server, it's about finding the balance, the perfect balance between what your server can perform, how many users, how many computers it will serve, how many RAM it will be added to that server in order to do that without causing a bottleneck for your processors. Typically, the server is not having only one processor. It will be having multiple processing unit or CPUs, and that will be considered something for the server motherboard. The server motherboard will be having an expansions for more than one processor. Unfortunately, when you are having that RAM, when you cut the power off, either from the server or from your PC, the content, every single piece of data that were stored on this RAM, it will be disappear. This is the reason that you use disks rather than RAM for the long-term storage. That will lead us to learn more about the storage. The storage first developed, and the very first hard disk drive developed by IBM in the 20th century. Traditionally, the hard disk drives used to be mechanical, half mechanical and half electronic, while the data are stored on a magnetic field on the rotating disks and platters. These are the traditional hard disk drives, and we are having a hard disk here that from Dell, and that is a SCSI hard disk drive. And for you to understand the difference between the SCSI or the direct storage connected to your computer or other type of storage, you will need to attend the course to gain that knowledge, or you have to work in the field for some time in order to understand what's going on and to know the difference not only by the photos but when you handle that by your own hands. So today's some hard disk drive, also known as solid state hard disk drive. While those solid state or hard disk drives are not having the capacity, or they are not having the same capacity for compared to the mechanical hard disk drive. They are having less capacity, but they are faster than the mechanical hard disk drives. Most of the personal computer usually will be having only one or two hard disk drive. In the server platforms, the server can have direct attached storage, which is called DAS, and it will be more than one hard disk drive if it's connected to the same server, or it can be having network attached storage, which we call NAS, or can be having storage area network, which we call SAN. The difference between those solutions for designing the storage itself, it depends on how much data need to be stored on the hard disk drives or SSDs, how fast we want the data to be accessed by the users, what are the resources that the client or your customer willing to be providing for you to design a storage solution for them around those resources. Basically how much money they are willing to spend on the storage. The last component or key component that's required for any server to perform is the network connection. And for you as a server technician, you need to learn about the differences between the different kind of the network connections and the different kind of NIC, network interface card. For example, the photo that we are seeing right now is a fiber optic NIC. While this can transfer data with the speed of light, a light pulses instead of the electric pulses. Without a network connection, the server will not be able to provide services for the computers or users that acquiring those services from the server. In the modern network and in the model client-server model, we can transfer data between users and computers to the server side with minimum 1 gigabit per second or faster. And when we call it faster, I mean here the speed of light. While you have the fiber optics taking over your network and you design the solution around that fiber optics data transfer. While between computers and printers on the client side or on your user side, the minimum speed that's acceptable at least 100 megabits per second. In order for all of these components to work and all those server components to work and to perform the tasks that they are designed to perform, and for your server to work, these components has to come together and be connected together in order for them to communicate. The computer component or the server component that can gather all of these electronic components and make sure that they can communicate successfully, it is the motherboard. For the processor to communicate with the rest of the system, the processor has to be connected to the motherboard, and that motherboard can handle the requests from the hard disk drive and transfer data from the hard disk drives to the processor. And before that, it has to go through the memories. So you have the memory, and that memory is controlled by a chipset of the motherboard, and the data will travel between those components to get to the processor and back and forth to be stored finally to your hard disk drives. The motherboard allows the processor to branch out and to maximize the performance of the processor by how many RAM can be connected to it, how many hard disk drives can be connected to it, how many network interface cards can be connected to it, in order for the processor and multiple processors to operate successfully and perform the mathematical and logical operations required from that server. Although everything is made around the processor, the motherboard can be considered the nervous system of the PC or the server. Motherboard capabilities have been generally expanded and most included the sound and the network card together, and even built in a graphic interface card, or the VEGA, the video card, the video and graphic interface card, and can be expanded even more. For the multimedia server, we can install even more graphic interface cards, or even the sound system, the sound cards too. Sometimes those boards or those cards, the add-on cards, we can call them the daughter boards, because we are having the motherboard that connect every single essential component of the server, and then we can have our add-on cards on the expansion boards of the motherboard of the server that we can add other cards, and those cards usually are having their own processing power and their own chipset too, and that's why we can call them the daughter boards. For the motherboard to perform, usually, if you didn't realize by now that those instructions between the motherboard and to control the motherboard instruction that given to the processor and to the RAM and to the your storage, either hard disk drives or SSD solid state drives, you have something called BIOS. The BIOS is what we call basic input output system. If the BIOS is not existing on your motherboard, your server will not perform. So what the BIOS can have? A BIOS is a chip that connected to the motherboard. That chip is having a software. We call the BIOS sometimes the system ROM chips or the system read-only memory chips. Those chips having the software written to them for the system to communicate with the basic components or the key components to communicate with your hard disk drives or your storage devices, and that include DVDs, of course, your DVD-ROM or DVD writer, to communicate with your processor, RAM, and NICs, and the VEGA, of course. The RAM and the processor, while they are handling the requests from the user, and the RAM can store them for short memory, for short storage time, and your hard disk to perform and store the data permanently, the BIOS has to have the instruction, the software instruction written to them to perform that. Sometimes, and most likely, as a server technician, you will find something called main BIOS and backup BIOS. The main BIOS is where the computer or the server is having the main instruction set, and in the server If something happened to the main PIS, usually the backup PIS will be deploying a fresh version of the instruction set to the main PIS without causing the interruption of the service. The process of upgrading your system PIS or system ROM PIS is called flashing the PIS. So in summary, you have the basic input and output system that has the instruction set for the motherboard to connect and communicate and manage communications between motherboard, microprocessors, hard disk drives, RAM, NICs in that ROM or that chip that called PIS. Without the PIS, your server will not perform.
Agbi?
Yes, Ms. Vishali?
Have you completed the webinar?
No, ma'am.
Oh.
I'm still continuing. The power supply and cases are essential hardware component, usually for the servers and for any computer too. The power supply is supplying the electric energy to your computer system and your server. That include the electric energy to your motherboard, the electric energy to your microprocessor, the electric energy to your hard disk drive, every single electric and electronic component, and even mechanical component if we consider the DVD writers, and they are half mechanical, half electronic too, or DVD writers. Those components are fed by energy and by electric energy that comes out from the power supply. A case with a power supply is traditionally served and designed around the workload, because as much as the workload for that server and the services that providing by the server is equal to how much electric energy consumed by the server. That electric energy is provided by the power supply. So for the IT server technician to understand and to work with the server while designing a server solution, you have to keep in mind not only how much RAM you will be deploying for your server or how many processors they are deployed to your motherboard, but also how you are going to be feeding your server. Feeding the server means providing the electric energy for your server to work. The server room usually will be having the cases, and it is the place that you will store your servers and keep them along with the communication devices, and that includes the routers and the switches and everything. And that server room that contain those components has to be secured, and only the IT server technicians and the systems engineers, I can say handful people, can allow be access to that room, and that can be secure via other security solutions. So Windows Server family started with Microsoft Windows NT. Microsoft Windows NT has been released in 1993. Along the line of the lifetime of the Windows Server family, we got Windows Server 2000, Windows Server 2003, Windows Server 2008, 2012, and lastly, Windows Server 2016. Along with that, Microsoft has been enhancing their products for the server line, even in the same family. And as for example, Microsoft will release another release 2 of the Windows Server, and I'm going to give here an example. Windows Server 2012 has been released. After that, by a year and a half, Microsoft released Windows Server 2012 R2 or Release 2, while updating and patching the server and taking care of the security breaches and enhancing the performance in the Release 2 more than when it was firstly released as just Windows Server 2012. As I said, with Windows NT in 1993, when it was released, it didn't have the Active Directory. So what did we have at that time? We had something called Workgroup. A workgroup is usually associated with computers that they are equal to each other, and they can provide service and also request services from each other. That model called a peer-to-peer network. This model is usually every user is responsible for their own backup and their own security of their computers. And for example, if one of those computers are connected to a printer and providing print servers for the other computers, and for example, the user that is using this computer is sick and going to be staying away from the office for a week or so, that means no one will be able to print and send print jobs to this computer simply because this computer is turned off because the user is not there. So they are not centralized. The data is stored across the network. Every single user has a shared partition and can share file between computers through that shared partition. But if I want to run a backup job, the network administrator or the administrator has to run between the computers every night to back up all those hard disk drives. Later on, the server model or the client server model has been presented with Windows Server 2000. A network and based server that is having a domain controller or a DC that has all the computers connected to it. That domain controller is a centralized place for the users to store data on it, for the users to have their credentials stored there for their own workstations, and for this domain controller can also handle other server rules like file hosting or print jobs. Microsoft Active Directory has introduced with Windows Server 2000, and the security of each user and computer is stored on that Active Directory. And the domain controller that hosts the Active Directory computer is considered the heart of the client server model. Starting with Windows Server 2008 and Windows Vista, you have in your control panel the server, and going through the hardware, you will be having the devices and printers. While this is considering a centralized place that gather every single computer and component connected to your server, either connected directly or connected indirectly. And you can see that printer and faxes can have fax as redirected from other places, can have other printers connected to your network, and other components, even cameras. During that, you will also be having the device manager, while you can manage your device and can actually access to the hardware device and can see the driver version of the device. You can see more details and even the power management of the device. That allow you to view the information of the maker of the device, the manufacturer, and who authorized the driver for this device, and even to see what is the sync capability of the mobile phones and other mobile devices that might be connected to that server and asking for services from that server. So what are the management tools that Microsoft supplied us as server technicians to do management or to perform management on our Windows Server platform? The most famous is the Microsoft Management Console. Microsoft Management Console, also referred to as MMC. It is a primary administrative tool or group of tools that you can manage your server through. It provides a standard method to create, save, open various administrative tools. While you can manage the certifications or the certificates that the server is managing or issuing to the other computer, which secures the communications between devices, it can also manage a computer or remote computer, which you can manage the server itself or other servers. It can manage the disk drives and can manage the authorization for the users and the computers. To start the MMC, simply you go to the start menu of your server and type MMC, or you can run the command mmc.exe. The administrative tools is a second tool that Microsoft has been giving us, and that started actually with Windows NT. It was there since the beginning. The administrative tools now is a folder in the control panels that can contain tools for the system and the administrator in order to know and to run the system and in order to know what's going on with the server. For example, you can find the Active Directory PowerShell, while you can have the PowerShell script to control your server or any other servers around. You can have the component services, and you can see how the services are running, and if they are running, stopped, or how much RAM and processing power those services are consuming. Also, you can run a backup jobs through that administrative tools. You can also control other services and other services provided by other servers. For example, the Internet Information Services, IIS, or the Active Directory. Along with that, you can have task schedule, and the task schedule you can perform a scheduled tasks during the day or the night. So, for example, a Windows backup. You don't want to run the Windows backup or the server backup during the day while the users are still working on their files. You want to do that during the time while the server doesn't have heavy load on it. To access that administrative tools, you can go to Control Panel, System and Security, and then select Administrative Tools. Or you can just doing that during the through the Start menu, and you just hit the Start button and you can find it, navigate through the Start menu and you can find it there. The other component or other tool to manage your server is the computer management. Computer management is local. You can manage your server locally, or you can manage your server remotely. Or you can use your server to manage other servers. Usually by using a single or consolidated desktop tools. Using the computer management, you can perform tasks like storage management, manage services and applications, and you can review Windows logs regarding applications, security, setups, and even forwarded events from other servers. Server Manager, starting from Windows Server 2008, Microsoft has given us this tool in order to have a centralized place or a centralized folder for you to manage your server. To do so, this is a startup server manager. The server manager will start up with the Windows server. It will give you a summary about your server. For example, this server has 5 rules out of 17 installed. Those rules are installed. 5 of them are active. One of them here is having an alert. The red alert means the fax server is not working or suffering from something can perform or affect the performance. Also, it provides us with the system services telling us one is running while one is stopped. The server rule is a set of software and programs that when they are installed probably and configured correctly, they enable you as a server technician to understand what's going on with your server and giving you a summary of the roles and the health of your server and the services. Role services, as those here that I'm pointing by the mouse to it, are software programs that provide us with the functionality of the server. If it's Active Directory, if it's domain name service, if it's a dynamic IP distribution, DHCP, if it's file server or application server, you can review all of that and even more. For example, here is the web server and here is the file server, here is the print and document services, and even the remote desktop services. With all those tools from Microsoft, and they are built in the Windows Server platform, you can perform everyday administrative loads and functionalities on your server, and you better understanding how your server is performing and how is your services is provided to the other computers and users. Your job as a server technician is to design or help with the design and deployment with the server, is to keep those servers running and providing the service without failure. That is the main job of the server technician. For now, we are going to end this webinar, and I'm going to be waiting for your questions and answer them. Bishali?
Yes, thank you, Magdi. That
Thank
was
you so
very
much.
informative. So we do have a special promotion running right now for the recommended courses for this webinar. And if you enroll yourself for the courses mentioned below, on your screen, we'll go ahead and add 15% to your savings. You'll see the promo code on the screen, and the offer is valid till June 28th, 2017. We're going to be launching a quick poll to find out how many people are actually interested in perhaps taking up some additional training. And just to let you know, we have several more webinars coming up. You can go ahead and check those out at netcomlearning.com/webinars and register for as many as you want. Also, please follow our social media pages to get the latest technology updates, and you can refer to our to the GoToWebinar chat window for the links. Okay, let's see. Let's get to some of these questions here. Give me one moment. Okay, one question, Magdi, is what's the next step after earning the server certification?
Okay, that's a good question. After you have a server certifications, either from CompTIA, which is a vendor list as I illustrated, if you want to continue with other branches to have a vendor specified certification, you can either go to Microsoft or Red Hat or other software providers, and you can earn their certifications. For example, Microsoft is having the MCSE on Windows Server 2012, which is the Microsoft Certified Solution Expert on Windows Server 2012 R2, or MCSA on Windows Server 2016. While you will learn more about and in-depth knowledge about the Windows Server platform and how to perform not only as a server technician, but as a server administrator or cloud administrator for the cloud side, or you can do that as a server engineer or the cloud engineer. On the other hand, you have Red Hat Certified Engineer and Red Hat Certified Administrator. Those certifications can provide you with the knowledge regarding Red Hat Linux and how you can support those platforms and how you can support their Linux distribution. So it depends on which path you would like to follow and how you want to go with the software that you would like to work with. So that's will be how you will be advanced with your career and your mindset. If you want to work with Microsoft, if you want to work with other software provider, it's about your choice and what you want to do.
Okay, well, great. Thank you, Magdi, for If you do come up with any additional questions, feel free to send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. And we hope that you all found today's webinar informative, and we look forward to seeing you back here with us very soon. Feel free to tell your friends and colleagues about our webinars and other courses. And thank you again, Magdi, and everyone, have a great day.
Thank you, Vishali. Thank you.